Hey guys, I'm Courtney. Today I have got some of my favorite spring DIYs, so let's just get straight into it. For this DIY, we're going to be making a really pretty faux fresh flower wall hanging, and I'm going to start with a Dollar Tree trash can. So taking my tin snips, on the bottom here you see that dark kind of thick metal gauge ring. You want to snip it on one side, or here I am snipping at the bottom, then go straight across and snip it on the opposite side. So basically you've kind of just cut the circle in half, so to speak, where you're snipping. Then once you've done that, in between those two snips, you're going to go along and snip the little crisscross wires. So what that does is that kind of breaks free half of the bottom of the trash can so that you can fold it in. Now, I'm just going to kind of let you watch what I'm doing here because I've fumbled a million times trying to describe it, but please drop a question down below if it's still not clear after you watch this. All right, there you have it. So now you can kind of see what I was trying to describe. I just folded up the piece that I cut loose into the inside of the trash can. Now at the very top, you're going to do the same thing where you cut that black metal ring on one side, then go to the opposite side that kind of matches up with the bottom and cut that. And then you want to actually go ahead and cut that sturdier metal ring off the top away from the crisscross wire. So you're just going to trim that off, and then that'll give you some flexibility to kind of shape the back. So now what I need to do is go ahead, I pulled the two pieces of the back together, and I'm going to trim off the extra wire, and then I'm just using some black zip ties from Dollar Tree to pull the two pieces on the back together so that it kind of makes a sturdy, for the most part, flat back, because this is going to be laying up against a sign that I found at the thrift store. So I'm just going to continue to go ahead and put zip ties through and just trim off any extra of the crisscross black wire. Once my half basket was shaped, I'm going to take a piece of burlap that I had from burlapfabric.com, and I'm going to go ahead and stick it down in there, and then along the top of the basket I'm just going to fold it over the edge and just use some hot glue to secure it on the top, and then I'm just going to kind of go around and smush it down in the basket, gluing here and there where I need to make it look secure. But then that way the insert of my basket has this really pretty kind of sage green burlap. And for this sign, I had this thrift store sign that I painted and distressed, and then I made a decal on my Cricut. And I'm gonna go ahead and apply this, and then I'm gonna go in with just a quick coat of some white paint, and I'm gonna let that dry till it's kind of tacky, and then I'm gonna go in with some black paint. By doing the white, it will help prevent bleeding from my stencil, and then I'm gonna let it dry. To attach my basket to the sign, I'm going to take some of these tower blocks from Dollar Tree and I'm just going to put a ton of hot glue on them and then smush them down on top of the wire and just kind of use these as what I'm going to secure it with. I didn't end up really putting much glue anywhere else. I did put a little bit at the bottom of the basket to help it, but this was the majority of where I stabilized the basket. And then once that was finished, I put in some florals from Dollar Tree and I wanted to make a little tag. So this is just a chalkboard tag from Dollar Tree that I'm just writing with chalk, $2. And then once that was done, once I got it on the wall, I felt like it needed a little bit of greenery, so I threw in some greenery that I had. And there you go, a sweet little spring wall decor that you can hang up and even leave it up year round. Moving into this next Dollar Tree DIY, this is probably one of my most favorite plant hangers I've ever made, and it's also the Dollar Tree project that got me featured on Dollar Tree's Instagram page, which was really awesome. So to start this DIY, I'm taking a piece of foam board. I just used a Dollar Tree vase as a little template to trace my circle, and this is going to be the base of my planter. Then taking some of the white rope from Dollar Tree, I'm just going to start by hot gluing the rope around the edge of this foam board, because if I did it on top, then you'd be able to see the foam board and I didn't want you to be able to see it. So I'm just going to put hot glue around the rim or the edge here of this little foam circle, and I'm going to go all the way around one time with the white rope. Then once I've done that, I'm going to take some of the Dollar Tree nautical rope and starting on top of it, this is where I'm just going to put glue on top of the white rope, and I'm going to go around in a circle with the brown nautical rope. And then because my ropes are all going to meet up in this one area, there is going to be kind of a little bit of a zigzag I guess seam you could call it, but when you hang it up you could just make sure that that's the side that hangs to the back of the wall, and no one will know the difference. So I'm just going to continue doing this until I get it to the height that I want, and then I'll be ready to go ahead and trim off the top. To finish this off, it was really easy. So the last little wraparound of white, I just cut it kind of where that little, you know, that seam I was talking about is, and I just kind of smushed it in to the rope. And then I did say the same thing for the brown nautical. I just cut it, and then I'm using some hot glue, I kind of manipulated it to go ahead and smush in against the top little round of the brown rope. Then once that was done, I needed to cover up the bottom of the foam board, and so I just went ahead and did some rope on the bottom using hot glue, and I just wrapped it around the bottom to cover up the foam board, just kind of going in a swirl pattern, nothing too tricky about that. And then I was ready to work on my side hangers. Now it's time to put my hangers on, but here you can kind of see that seam I was talking about. And for the hanger, I'm just using 3 pieces of nautical rope that I tied at a knot up on the top, and then I'm just going to space them evenly around inside of the planter, and I'm just going to use hot glue to attach it, and then this little spring hanger is ready to go. For this next DIY, I'm going to be transforming this Tide container. Now, I cut off the top and I had painted it brown because I was going to do something else, and then I decided that I wanted to attach book pages to it. So this is kind of an oopsie, but I did want to show you the process I went through. So I wouldn't say that it's necessary that you need to paint the container if you do use a Tide Pod container. So I'm going with my good trusty Gorilla Glue spray, which I absolutely love, but when I started to stick it down, it was seeping through the pages and it just wasn't looking very good. Then I found this Mod Podge spray and I thought, oh, I'll try that. Fail again. I tried to like spread it out and wipe it around. It just was a no-go. So trusty old Mod Podge here. I'm just going to use that to attach my pages, and then I am going to set it aside to let it dry. My container is now dry. I did seal it with Mod Podge all the way around it just to make sure that it was sturdy. And then I wanted to put something at the top of this little container, so I'm just using some of this Dollar Tree white nautical rope, and I'm just going around with some hot glue and attaching it just like that. And then once that was done, I was ready to start working with my wooden beads. Now I just stained these with some of the folk art brown wax that I have, and then I threaded them on a couple of pieces of just black wire, and I went ahead and secured them the best I could, and then I hot glued the handles to the inside of the container. And then once that was done, this was ready to hold whatever you want it to, whether it be florals or some Easter books or some random objects, whatever you want to put it into it. Moss balls would be cute as well. So you could definitely do all kinds of greenery and use it throughout the year. Moving into this next DIY, I'm going to be working with this banner, and this is going to be something you can put up year round, but I'm going to add a little greenery to it to make it a little springy. So this is just a wooden pennant banner that I got from the Target dollar spot. I'm going to start by going in with a little bit of white chalk paint from Waverly, of course, and just paint it around willy-nilly, not trying to get full coverage. And then on one of these, I did need to go in and fill the holes in because this is going to be hanging, and I didn't want holes on one of them. You'll see kind of that in a minute. If you can't find a pennant banner like this, you certainly could get some foam board from Dollar Tree, perhaps cover it with the wood contact paper and then paint over that to kind of get the same look. So definitely a couple of options. You could, even if you have a plethora of those wooden houses from Dollar Tree, you could pop out the backs of those and use just the backs to make this same little banner. Once the holes were all filled, I'm going to take some stencils that I have, and for the O, I'm going to go ahead and trace it out, but this is where the greenery is going to go. So I'm just simply tracing the O down so that I know exactly where I need to glue my greenery. And then for the rest of the letters, it's going to be H, M, and E, and I'm just going to go in with some black chalk paint and go ahead and stamp those in until I get them nice and covered. Then taking a little bit of hot glue, I'm going to start putting it down in the O here, and then I'm just going to use some Dollar Tree green moss and just start filling it in until I get it nice and full. And then again, my favorite thing, channel your inner Mr. Miyagi and go ahead and trim this up. I'm just using my little cheaty scissors, as some people that I know call them. Mr. Cheap, that is. These are just curved blade little scissors, which I absolutely love. They're from Fiskars. And I'm just going to trim it all up till I get the O looking exactly how I want it. And then once that was done, I wanted to go in and just give a quick light sanding to all of my letters. And then I'm going to be ready to go ahead and attach my pennant, or each pennant piece, together. And here are the two pieces side by side. So the H I've sanded, you can kind of tell it's more the grayish tones because of that black paint. It kind of mixed in. And then if you want it more of kind of a neutral, then just leave it as is. Then to get these pieces attached, I'm going to be putting 3 beads between each piece. So first I took some silver lining Waverly chalk paint and just brushed a light coat on the beads. Then I took a piece of twine and looped it through the hole, pulled the little tail through, and then I'm going to feed the beads on these pieces of twine, so 3 beads on each side. Then I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape and go ahead and just wrap it around the 2 pieces of twine to give me a little bit of, because it'll kind of flatten out and give me a little surface area. And then once I do that, I'm just going to directly glue the next piece, which would be the O, to these pieces of twine that have been wrapped in painter's tape. And then I'll repeat the process for the O and the M. And then of course the E was the one that had the 2 holes that I filled in at the end. And of course I added a piece of twine to the top so that this would hang, and there you go, you've got yourself a year-round decor piece with a little touch of spring. This DIY I wanted to add because it is so customizable, and it's definitely something super fun that I needed to dust off basically. These are burn stencils that I used a couple of times on my channel last year, and I need to bust them out a little bit more, but I wanted to share them just in case you like to try new things and want to, you know, add something to your crafting stash. Check them out. They're called burn stencils. I will link the information down below. Not sponsored. I just wanted to share this. Now, if you don't have these, you could get the same look just by using a scorch marker, which I've done several projects showing a scorch marker. You basically just write with the marker, or you can, you know, fill in stencils, and then all you need is your heat gun to make a burned look, so you can kind of get a very similar look. And all I'm doing here is just filling this stencil in until I get the darkness that I like. And I already had the word blessed, which was nice. I do have the separate letters. I was going to put spring is here, but I just figured I'll go with blessed. And then this is just a wood round from Hobby Lobby. And then you can go in and add whatever greenery and flowers that you want to. For this DIY, I am taking this little sign that I got from Goodwill for 99 cents, and I'm going to break it down and make a little spring planter hanging. I took off the chalkboard, and then I'm going to take off the rope at the top. Once those were off, I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat of paint. I'm not going to paint the whole thing, but I'm just going to brush some white Waverly chalk paint on. Then I'm going to take a piece of nautical rope, and as you can see here, I am taking long strips of rope and just hot gluing it to this one. Now, it may look like a wig to you. I am not making a wig, although that's what I was thinking while I was making this. And after I put the pieces down, now, however many pieces you put down depends on how long. Basically, I'm making like a little rope basket to put on my mason jar. And all I'm doing is taking other pieces of rope, and I'm just going to alternate feeding over, under, over, under, over, under, and then the next rope I put, I'll do the opposite, under, over, and then over, under, over. You get what I'm saying. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I get enough of it so that I can make a little rope basket, so to speak, to put on the front of the mason jar. To close this thing off and get all these extra pieces of rope trim, this is what I'm doing. So first, the very last piece of the nautical rope that's going horizontally, I'm securing it to the vertical pieces with some hot glue. And then I'm going to explain this, try to explain this the best I can. That horizontal piece on the bottom has rope pieces on the top side and the underneath side. So once this is secured, the nautical pieces of rope right here, as you can see, that are on the top part of this rope, I'm trimming those off, okay? Once those are trimmed off, I'm gonna have a couple of these pieces that are underneath it, and those are the ones that I'm bringing up and over and I'm securing. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm just gonna let you watch this, but that way the bottom of it is nice and pretty, and it looks really, really nice when you go to attach it to the mason jar. Once those were all secured, all the extra pieces that were hanging off, I simply cut them with scissors, and then I just secured those with some hot glue. And then this is what it looks like when it's all finished. To secure it to my mason jar, I just simply took some hot glue and ran it along the bottom of it, along with the sides. And then this next step, if you are afraid of fire, please do not do it. If you do decide to do this, make sure you have a fire extinguisher, a bucket of water, all the safety precautions involved. You can burn it with a lighter to get rid of the extra little wispy strings, and then that way it kind of cleans it up, or you could leave it natural, whatever you prefer. And then I did add a little rope bow to the top of it, and then you put whatever greenery you want to. I decided to attach this mason jar to a little wooden tray that I'd gotten from Hobby Lobby quite a while ago, and you could put florals, you could put greenery, you could use this year round for all seasons. But there you go, another little wall hanging that you can display decor. This DIY I really like because I have used it multiple places in my house. So I'm going to be taking one of these tags that were left over from Christmas and a book page, and I just traced the tag out on the book page, cut it out, and then I'm going to attach this book page to the front of the tag using some Gorilla Glue adhesive spray. Once that was done and it was all trimmed out, I kind of wanted to distress the page a little bit. So just taking my finger and some brown cream wax, I'm just kind of rubbing the wax all over the page to get it kind of a distressed look. Then I was ready to work on my pot. I'm just using some of this burlap ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and I kind of folded it in thirds, and then I cut out a trapezoid or pot shape. And then once that was done, this twig was from Dollar Tree several years ago when they were selling all the twigs, and I kind of wanted to amp up the twig a little bit, so I ended up taking a piece of twine and just hot gluing and wrapping it at a diagonal around the twig. Once that was all wrapped and secured, I was ready to go ahead and glue down my pot. So I went ahead and put a little piece of Dollar Tree lace just to kind of, I don't know, dress up the pot one more time. And then I just put glue on the bottom of the little burlap pot as long as the sides. I did leave the top open, and I went ahead and glued that down. Once it was down, I glued my twig down, and then I was ready to work on the topiary part of this project. And for that, I just put hot glue kind of in a circle and just layered on the Dollar Tree moss until I got the look that I wanted. Again, doing the whole Mr. Miyagi trim thing. Once that was set and ready to go, my last step here was I wanted to kind of stuff the pot, so I went ahead and put some of the floral moss into the base of the pot just to give it a little more 3D and kind of make it poof out a little bit more, and just, I don't know, I just felt like it made it look more realistic. And then I put a piece of twine at the top, tied it off, and then this piece is great for 3-tiered trays. I've put it on a bookshelf, and currently it's hanging on my cabinet that has all my wedding memorabilia. This Dollar Tree DIY is a DIY that could be considered kind of a staple home decor item, but we're going to spring it up. So I'm going to use some of the Agave Waverly chalk paint, and then the 2 items you're going to need from Dollar Tree are 2 packages of the foam dice as well as one of the wall art hangings. Now, I had this wall art hanging that I had painted white for a different project that I didn't end up using, so that's why it's solid white. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and give all of these some really good coats of paint. For the dice, I ended up painting 3 coats. The canvas, because it was already painted white, only took 1 coat, but I would imagine if it had writing and things on it, you'd probably have to go 2, maybe 3 coats. Once that was all done, I kind of wanted to just distress it a little bit with some white paint, so I just dry brushed white paint all over it. And then the last step here is just to go ahead and hot glue the dice to the bottom of the canvas with some hot glue. These will be the legs for the little display tray. And then there you go. This is a great little springtime piece that you can display all kinds of fun spring and Easter decor. For this Dollar Tree spring DIY, we're going to start with one of their 5x7 frames, and I'm going to go ahead and break it down, remove the backing, and then once I'm left with the frame, I'm going to take some Waverly White chalk paint and paint the frame until it kind of has that distressed look and feel to it. Then taking this printable that I found online that I will definitely link down below, I'm going to go ahead and trim it by sticking the frame over it, marking where I need to cut it. I'm making sure to leave a nice big white gap on the top because that's where I'm going to be adding some Scrabble tiles as well as some felt flowers. Now, I will say this. When I went to start trimming this, I trimmed it, and the extra scraps, I ended up crumpling up this sign. Ta-da! And I was thinking to myself, oh, fantastic, Courtney. Why did you do that? That's just great. But then I started thinking how I could make this work for me. And I realized that if I made it really crumpled and just continued to beat it up and throw it around and step on it and do whatever, it actually kind of came out looking like, kind of giving off that linen vibe. So that oopsie turned out to be a really awesome oopsie. Once that was done, I was ready to go ahead and get this put into my frame. Now, I was going to stick it on the cardboard backing, but for whatever reason, I decided not to, and I stuck it to the glass. Not really sure why I did that. I don't really remember at this point because, like I said, this sign was something I made last year, but I would imagine you could stick it on the cardboard backing. I just did the glass. Then once that was finished, I was ready to start working with my Scrabble tiles. Those were going to be glued up at the top in the white part, and then I was ready to start working on my felt flowers. Time to make some felt flowers. This is just some felt from Hobby Lobby, the 1mm, that's 33 cents that you can often get for $1. You're going to cut a square of the felt and then just freehand yourself a circle, no big deal. These curved blade scissors are game changers when working with felt flowers, I will say that. Once you've done that, go ahead and fold your circle in half, and then you're just gonna make a little snip, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't need to be super large. And then you're gonna end up with a little slit in the middle. Then taking your scissors, you're gonna start kind of at the end, one end of the slit there, and you're just gonna start cutting it, making little bumps, I guess, humps. I don't know what you wanna call it. But you're just gonna continue to go around making little bumps and working your way all the way to the outside of the circle. So as you can see, I'm just kind of continuing to cut these little half-rounded bump humps. I don't know what you want to call them. And I'm just going to keep going all the way around until my circle is completely cut. Ta-da! That's what it looks like when you are all finished. Again, notice how it's not super even. That's the beauty of making felt flowers. It's really a nice kind of beginner forgiving project in my opinion. Then starting at the opposite end where you started, so not where the slit was, you're going to go ahead and roll the little rounded spiral into itself, and then go ahead and secure the end with some hot glue. And then once that's done, you've got yourself this really pretty little rosette flower. And then now we're going to make another flower. This one's even easier. You just, again, start with a circle. Notice this is kind of rough. I didn't really, I wasn't going for perfection here. You're going to start on the outside of the circle. And what you're going to do is you're just going to cut a spiral working your way in. So you're going to continue to work your way all the way in to the center of this felt circle. All right, and then when I get almost to the end, I did kind of leave a little bit of a piece. You can see there, kind of a circle, I guess you could say, so that it would make it easier for the bottom of the flower to be secure. And then on this felt flower, you're going to start rolling where you started cutting. So you're just going to, again, roll it onto itself, continue rolling, 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 all the way down until you get to the end, and then just secure it up with some hot glue, and then that little kind of rounded flap, I guess I had left over, as you can see here. See how nicely it just kind of goes on there. And then I had some stiff green felt that this is actually from Arteza, I think. And I'm just gonna freehand some leaves. And then I was ready to go ahead and pull my sign together. So I did, before I secured the spring letters down, I decided I was gonna wrap some twine around it. So I went ahead and wrapped twine around one side, and then I took a piece of twine and kind of pulled it in and tied a little bow. Then from there, I kind of placed the flowers, placed the letters, just hot glued everything down, and this sign was finished. This DIY is going to be a thrift flip. So I found this sign, but I only wanted to use the top for it. So I'm going to break it down and then give this top part a couple good coats of Waverly White chalk paint. While that's drying, I'm going to take these wooden letters that came from Hobby Lobby in a huge pack, and I'm going to paint them different pastel colors, pink and blue and yellow and purple and turquoise. And once those were all painted, then I knew I wanted to add a little pennant banner. And so I'm going to use some of my favorite fabric that I have had, just different pastel colors. And I'm just going to cut some little tiny triangles. And once that's all ready to go, I'm going to take some twine, and up at the top, I'm going to add some beads to it and go ahead and make my twine hanger. Then I'm going to go ahead and just directly hot glue the little pieces of fabric for the banner as well as my letters down, and then this little spring sign is done. It's a cute little sign that you could put on a wreath, you could just hang it on your front door, you could just set it on a shelf as well. Just a quick little easy pastel colored spring decor piece. Moving on to this DIY, this was a sign that I had from Hobby Lobby, and all I did was paint it with some of the Plaster Waverly chalk paint and then take that same paint color and swipe it all around the frame of this until I got it looking how I wanted to. Once that was done, I had this little wooden home sign that came from Hobby Lobby, and I took some hot glue and I just started covering it with the green moss. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I really like doing these kind of projects, making like monster crazy looking things like this, because I know I get to go in and trim it. I know I've said a million times, be Mr. Miyagi, trim the thing. I don't know. I think it's so fun, and I feel like I need to have a bonsai tree garden. Anyway, I digress. So once I've gotten this all secured, I go in and trim it with all my different scissors, pruning it, making it look nice. Once it was all clean and ready to go, I wanted to make sure that it was kind of secured. So I actually did take some hairspray and kind of spray over the top of this just to kind of help hold this moss in place. And I have to do it tresemme, ooh la la. Okay, come on. How many of you were thinking that? Comment down below if you even know what I'm talking about. And then I wanted to add a little something to the frame, and so I just took a piece of burlap ribbon and glued it directly to the middle, and then glued the home sign directly on top of the ribbon, and there you go. This is a great little piece just to add a touch of greenery somewhere. I absolutely loved how it turned out, the simplicity of it, but I'm going to be frankly honest, I absolutely loved trimming this up. For this DIY, we are going to be making ourselves a cute little topiary. Now, I kind of wanted a really cool, earthy looking base for this topiary. So what I'm going to be using are some of these little sticks that came from Dollar Tree. And they are, I don't know, it was a couple years ago, but you guys know what I say. If you don't have them, go out in your front yard, trim your own branches. If you don't have trees, go to your neighbor's yard, offer to trim their yard up and get yourself some free branches. Now, you're going to start with working with a group of 4 of these sticks. And what I did is I took this little this box that holds my X-Acto knives, and I pushed the sticks up against it so that I could try to get the bottoms of these as even as possible, so that way when this little planter stands up on a surface, it's not super wobbly. And I'm just going to use some of the Surebonder wood glue to attach these pieces together, and I'm going to go ahead and glue 4 pieces of these together, and then I'm going to do the second set of 4 using the wood hot glue. Now we're ready to go ahead and put this thing together. So I've got my 4 pieces that are glued together, and then to attach those, I'm just, as you can see right here, sticking 2 sticks, twigs, branches, whatever you want to call it, in between. So essentially, if you were to look at each side and spin it around, they would have 4 pieces. So you're only going to need, after you do your 2 sets of 4 glued together, you're going to just need 4 more pieces total. Once that's done, I'm just going to take a piece of foam and go ahead and stick it in there. Now, I did not put a base on this because it's going to sit on a counter, and I just made sure that the foam that I shoved in there was kind of it was in there pretty tight. But if you want to put a base in there, you certainly could. Then I'm ready to go ahead and start working on my topiary. So this is a dowel rod from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to use some of this brown cream wax that came from Hobby Lobby and go ahead and give this one good coat. This is going to be the trunk, I guess you could say, from my topiary. Then I'm going to take some of these styrofoam balls from Dollar Tree, and guess what? I'm going to glue them and cover them up with the moss, and then I'm going to go in and, you know, trim it all up and make it look good. And I'm going to do 3 of these total. Now, one thing you could do with the dowel rod is if you wanted to enhance a little bit, you could, after you slide these little topiary bushes down, you could go in and wrap some twine around it, kind of like I did for that little tag hanger. You certainly could do that if you want to kind of dress it up a little bit more. And then all I'm going to do on the base of this is just wrap some twine around the little wooden planter, and then this topiary is all finished. This DIY is probably one of my favorite little wreaths I've ever made. I do not make a lot of wreaths on my channel, but I really loved how this one turned out. So taking one of these wreath forms from Dollar Tree, it was one of these smaller wreath forms, and these moss stones, I'm going to hot glue them down on top of the wreath form. And I'm just going to start by gluing one kind of close to the center, and then staggering one above it, one down, one above it, until I go all the way around. Then once those are down, I'm going to go in with one more layer of the rocks on the top, just kind of filling in those gaps and going around in a circle, again using hot glue. Now this will be inside my house, but I will say this: if you want to put something like this outside, and if you live somewhere where it's hot, do take in mind that hot glue will start to make your projects melt. So like in Texas, we can't really get away very often with using hot glue and wreaths because things start to melt. So once that's done, I wanted to add some twine to this to kind of, I don't know, dress it up a little bit. So what I decided to do was just take, make, I guess, segments of 3 pieces of twine, and I just knotted them on both ends, and then I just kind of went in and placed them where I wanted them to go, and then hot glued them down. Once that was done, I had this little window frame that I had made over from a thrift find, and I just hung it on there with a little nail, and I can change it out if I want to, but there you go, a very simple green wreath that you can use year-round. For this spring wall hanging, I'm going to be making over this clearance find that I got from Hobby Lobby. I'm just going to tape off the top and bottom of it because I liked the green color of it. Then I'm going to go in with some Waverly Ivory chalk paint to paint over the words. Once those were covered and it was dry, I had these doilies that came from Hobby Lobby, and I decided I wanted to kind of lay those down and trim them up. So I just kind of mess around with it till I like the look. And then to get them attached, I just used some of my Gorilla Glue spray adhesive. Now this one is repositionable, and so that way if I ever decided that I wanted to break the sign down or use the doilies somewhere else, I can just peel them off, but it still has a very strong hold. So once that was done, I was ready to go ahead and get my pot attached, and I'm just using one of these terracotta pots from the Dollar Tree. I wanted to add a little something to it. I didn't want to paint the pot. I just wanted to leave the terracotta color. So I took a couple pieces of twine and just did a simple braid, and then I just hot glued that around the little rim of the pot. Once that was done, I went ahead and decided where I wanted to put my pot on the thing, and then I just directly hot glued it because I wasn't putting anything heavy in there. Now, if you were going to put, you know, rocks or real flowers or potting soil, you would definitely need to reconsider what you're using to attach the terracotta pot, but I was just putting lightweight greenery in there, so hot glue worked great. And then that's it. You just stuff it with some greenery or some flowers, and here you have a nice little spring wall piece that you can put up. I don't know what it is about doilies. They just remind me of spring, so it was something different. Just the texture of it just makes it look really elegant. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to break down this little sign by popping off the metal piece and then painting that part white. Then taking some raffia, I'm going to tie together groups of, I don't know, 4 to 5 pieces of raffia. And basically what I'm doing is doing another little weave here, just like I did on that other little wall hanging with the rope. And I'm going to weave through the raffia until I get it looking how I want to, because again, I'm making a little basket for this sign. Once that is all weaved, I'm going to go ahead and hot glue this to the bottom of this sign, kind of on the half circle shape. And then taking my pencil, I'm going to handwrite the word bloom. And then here I'm going to take my scorch marker. So this is what I was talking about. You're just going to trace over your word with the scorch marker. And then once you've done that, you're just going to take your heat gun and you're just going to put it over the word until you get it the darkness that you would like to get. Then once that's finished, I'm just going to go ahead and stuff the little raffia part of the sign with some greenery. You could also do flowers, but I did, after I put this greenery in there, I took it all out and I wanted to kind of sand the top of the sign. So I did that, and then I went ahead and put the greenery back in. And then the last thing to do is just to make a little hanger for it. So I'm just going to screw 2 little eye hooks onto the top of the white portion and then just use some twine. And then there you go. You've got yourself a little hanging basket that you can put anywhere in your home. This Dollar Tree DIY is going to be using 3 of these triangle signs. So the first thing I'm going to do is break them down by first popping off all the animals. And then I'm going to take out the backs and go ahead and pull out all the little prongs. Now, one of them I did end up leaving the back in, but I did take it out just so I could paint the bottom so that that would be the base of my planter. So essentially only 2 of the triangles need to have the prongs pulled out as well as the backs removed. Then I'm going to take some Waverly White chalk paint and coat them all really well with some of the paint. Once that is finished, I'm ready to start building my planter. And to make the sides of the planter, I'm going to be using some of these popsicle sticks. And I'm going to put 4 popsicle sticks on each side. So the 3 triangles, I just decided the easiest way to do this would be to go ahead and start by working on one side at a time. So I attached the popsicle sticks to the base of the planter. Then I went ahead and hot glued them to the middle piece of the planter. And then I went ahead and hot glued those to the top piece. And then I flipped it and did the same thing for the other 2 sides. Once that was done, I wanted to put some feet on this, so I just hot glued some beads down to the bottom of the planter. I get all my beads on Amazon. And then for the inside, I wanted to add something a little extra, so I did go ahead and take some burlap ribbon and secure that to the inside. And then at that point, you've got yourself a little planter, and you can go ahead and fill it with greenery, or you could go ahead and fill it with florals. For this sign, I'm going to be using this thrift find. I'm going to break it down and paint 2 good coats of the Waverly White chalk paint. Once that's done, I have this white fence that I got from Hobby Lobby that I'm going to stick along the bottom. And then using these stickers, I'm going to use these as stencils and go ahead and put them down to say Farm Fresh Carrots. Now, once that's done, I'm going to take the fence off and then take a votive candle, and rub the wax all over. I've shown this technique so many times on my channel. It is my most favorite distressing technique because you really get that authentic chippy look. And you're going to rub the whole thing with wax. Once you've done that, I'm going to go in with some of the Maze Waverly chalk paint, and I'm going to paint a good coat all over my sign. Then I started to remove the letters, but then I realized that when you let the yellow paint dry, you want it to not dry completely, but almost. At that point, you have to go in with the scraper and start scraping. So I was realizing it was taking me a little time to remove the letters, so I just ended up and did all my scraping first, and then I pulled off the little stencil letters, and I had this really awesome chipped up yellow sign. Then all I needed to do was just go ahead and attach my little fence, and I just used hot glue. I had to end up using 2 pieces of this, so I just trimmed and just made it fit. And then I glued on these little carrots from Dollar Tree, and there you go, a cute little farm fresh carrot sign that you could use for spring and Easter. Now this Dollar Tree DIY is something totally different. I have to say, when I made it, I was thinking, okay, this is quite different, but people seem to really like it, and I really loved how it turned out. So the first thing you're going to need is a candlestick from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to go in with some of the plaster chalk paint and paint that up. Then taking this little Dollar Tree package, I'm going to wrap all of the little sides of this birdhouse with fabric, and it's going to be all the different spring fabrics you can find. So this birdhouse, I know birdhouses are all the rage right now, but this is kind of like a shabby chic birdhouse, and I just cut the pieces, allowing a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch around the edge, and I just hot glued those on to all the pieces of the birdhouse. Then I went in and I just assembled my birdhouse. And I went ahead and cut out the little hole, and then I added a little bit of the floral moss to the front of it, and then just glued this birdhouse to the top of the candlestick, and that is it. This is just your springtime shabby chic birdhouse. I just love the textures of the fabric. It's just something totally different, and I'm still loving it to this day. Wrapping up to the last DIY, I'm taking this frame that I had in my stash, and I'm going to give it a couple good coats of white paint. And then taking a piece of burlap, gray burlap to be specific, I'm going to go ahead and attach that to the backing of the frame. Then I made a stencil with this plastic stencil material that I found at Hobby Lobby, and then I cut out the image on my Cricut. And I'm going to use this little bird, and I'm just going to stamp with some paint a little pink bird, add a little twine bow, and that is it. I just love the simplicity of this. I mean, you could do a bunny, you could do a tree, you could do a flower. There's so many different things you could do, but I just love the gray and the pink together. And again, it's super simple, but there you go. Another little spring DIY that you can make in no time at all. And there you have it, a smorgasbord of spring DIYs that I hope will inspire you to create some of your own. As always, please let me know down below which one of these was your favorite. Also, let me know, what is your favorite thing about spring? I've got some super fun videos coming up that I can't wait to share. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Here are a few more videos you might enjoy. I will see you in the next one. Bye!